you for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Joining us on the line now, we have Hamdan Abdul Majeed, Managing Director of Think City. Hamdan, good evening. Thank you for coming on the show tonight. I understand about a month ago, Think City published recommendations for policymakers in dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. And in it, you advocated a three-pronged management strategy, including managing the economy and the post-crisis impact. I want to begin with what you think of today's announcement by the Prime Minister to allow most business activities to resume on Monday.
First and foremost, thank you for having us in the show. I believe that what you call this announcement by the government is something that has been on the horizon. Obviously, it seems to be something that has been brought forward. But given that the official date for the MCO closing was on May 12th, we believe that lockdown was necessary to flatten the curve, and it has definitely come at a significant economic and social cost. It is absolutely crucial that the rest of society, businesses and individuals do their part to follow the government guidelines and ensure that this effort isn't wasted. Because one of the key things that we have achieved is now to bring down the transmission factor to something that is within control and allows for the government. And during this period, the government has been able to boost up its capacity to manage the crisis more effectively as now for the Prime Minister.
So, just to interrupt you, can I get you to clarify, is this easing of the MCO for businesses in line with your recommendations for policymakers? Is this the exit strategy that you envisioned?
This is definitely, the timing is something we can always debate, but the exit from MCO is something that we already anticipate, given that the MCO was only intended to actually buy time to build up the capacity in the healthcare system to manage the crisis. So we have seen that over the last 6 weeks, the government has stepped up efforts to strengthen the healthcare system to face the COVID crisis. As we know that, even after this conditional MCO, the disease is still at large and it has not disappeared. It will be there and it's expected to be there over the next 12 to 18 months or even beyond till a vaccination is found. Till a vaccination is found, then the key then is how do you bring back economic life back to normal? And to achieve that is basically that we need to now figure out how do we live with COVID being around us. And this can only be
I'd like to ask precisely, I'd like to get to that question because it seems like the one thing that this disease has done is it's attacked the very social nature of human life. I mean, cities are vibrant because people are packed together, they meet, they congregate. Think City has been, creating spaces in our cities for sociality, for people to come together. How will life change in the short term, and how do we plan for that? Can cities do more to help people adjust to the new normal, as they call it?
First and foremost, I think cities are still going to be part of our everyday life going forward. While definitely this crisis has actually brought to fore some of the issues about cities and the challenges of operating cities, and the issue that you rightly raised that aligns with the current issue of the pandemic is that we definitely will not be able to have large gatherings, will not be able to have what you call large events, conferences, and so on. However, we believe that with the right protocols in place, with proper testing, tracing, and a boosted health capacity, we would be in a much better position to bring economic life again back to cities. And to do that, we will definitely have to adjust to a new norm whereby every one of us will have to walk around with masks in public spaces. We need to push and adhere to personal hygiene, wash our hands as often as possible. Physical distancing is definitely needed, but not social distancing. Where possible and not needed, they need to limit our travels in the immediate period till things come back to a certain level of normality. And we need to reorganize our public spaces. As you have seen, some of our public spaces, like the market and others, has already adopted to this new norm. You have seen how restaurants are slowly now will adjust to the new norm, whereby they will need to ensure that there's physical distancing is put in place, proper markings on the streets and so on. So in the immediate period, there will be a big adjustment that you will see in the public life. But as we will know that we as human beings are quite adaptive and quite quickly we will soon learn to operate with a constrained environment and go about with our daily routine.
Hamdan, definitely, there's going to be an adjustment period, but within that transition, are there any red flags, any areas that you're concerned about?
I think what would be concerned is that I hope that the public at large doesn't see this announcement by the Prime Minister to say that we are back to normal, as clearly highlighted by the Prime Minister, that this is a conditional movement, that is still a conditional MCO. For those who need to be out there, then they will be allowed to be out there with no restriction, but complying to the new guidelines that will put in place. In fact, we on our Think City's part, we will be sharing our guidelines for how offices, construction sites, and many public spaces can be operationalized to comply to operate in an environment where we need to live with COVID. And we see that more and more in terms of building the capacity of the system to manage public health is needed to ensure that there's a high level of compliance, so that we will not see any new clusters emerge and so on. As I said earlier, that the disease is still at large. There's always this high risk that that we could end up going back into MCO if there's no discipline among the general public to adhere to the guidelines that have been set.
Hey, Hamdan, you talk about people being adaptive. I mean, I think of people being creatures of habit and actually less adaptable sometimes. And, in terms of getting the message out, do you think we've been successful? Have we only focused on, groups that understand the national language or English? Have we missed out on our foreign worker population that has its own social life in different languages? Have we done enough in messaging, especially for the inner cities of the Klang Valley?
I see that there's quite a bit of room in terms of education, so that we can build the capacity of the public to know how to operate in an environment where we need to live with COVID. And this also needs to include those who are vulnerable, the migrants, and so on, who may not necessarily be fluent in the language that we speak. We need to ensure that it's reached out to the vernacular languages and so on. In fact, we may need even to have demonstration of how to ensure that these guidelines are implemented effectively. So there is quite a bit of ramping up of capacity to manage this, what I would call bringing back the economy online, whereby that everyone now needs to learn to live with this new norm, and ensure that there's a high level of compliance. Now, some industries have already started in terms of adjusting to this. Given that the government has been slowly bringing the economy back over the last couple of weeks, where you see some of the factories have been operating, some construction sites have also started operating. So I believe there's quite a bit of lesson that's been learned. We have seen also some of the public spaces have been operating during this whole MCO period, and people have generally gone to supermarkets, markets, banks, and they've used various facilities in the public realm.
Okay, Hamdan, sorry to cut you off. The 1 minute that we have left, practical problem, rush hour in the city, public transport. How do you solve that problem?
I think people will have to start adjusting and start working in different timing hours. They will probably need to work alternate days from home. I think we may need to also consider, as I said, for a quite extended period, we need to live with the fact that things won't be what it was pre-March. Whether we need to accept the fact that life has changed dramatically and will be there like that way for quite an extended period, and that includes how we work and how we go about doing our everyday affairs and so on. And we may even need to consider that at a certain point in time in the future that we may be given the authority to go out and so on. So
right.
Because managing public is a very challenging thing, and I believe that we're going to learn quite a bit as we open up. I hope that as we open up, there will be discipline among society to ensure that we comply to the requirements, so that government can manage this transition in a smooth manner, and hopefully that it doesn't give rise for the emergence of any new clusters.
All right. Hamdan, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, with me Sharaad, Kuttan, signing off. Have a great weekend, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.